Hello and welcome to the Smart Divorce Podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today by the wonderful Becky Field. Now, I have to tell you what she told me I had to say to introduce her because this will make you giggle. So she says she's a coach to small business owners, which is right. She says she's a fearful money queen and a genuinely nice person. And I can absolutely vouch for the fact that she's a genuinely nice person. Welcome, Becky.
I should have bigged it up a little bit more, I think. Hi, Tamsin. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I loved that when I read it. I was like, that's just brilliant. Um, so as she said, Becky works with a lot of small business owners, and on the podcast we haven't really talked about starting your own business, but it's certainly something that quite a lot of people ask me about when they're coming out the sort of back end of divorce, when they're looking at starting to make some money, whether that be as a side hustle or whether that be as a main stream of income. So I know you work with lots of small business owners. So I thought it'd be great to have you on today to give us some ideas and some tips, and maybe talk a little bit about how you got started.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we've just said, just before we came on, is that, divorce or any sort of change is a massive. I always liken it to a snow globe where life circumstances shake it up, and we literally need to kind of like let things settle. And especially if you've been in a partnership for any length of time, I think, or even in a job for any length of time, when things change, we automatically have a period of reflection. Even though it doesn't feel calm, it feels totally disorganized, disorientated. But actually, once we let things settle, it is about a process of just thinking, what's next? Um, so, do you want me to carry on?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, I mean, I work with people before they go for a change. So usually when they're in that low point where things have changed, but also they don't know what to do next. So what I do is help people to realize what it is that they want to do. And quite often, a lot of people come to me because they have lost direction or they can't see a way through. And especially if somebody is come out of a partnership which has been for a period of time, and let's face it, whenever we're in a partnership, we lose a sense of our independence. Sometimes we can lose a sense of our identity by becoming a mom, by becoming a partner, a wife, a husband. Even, I do work with men as well. So to actually then have that massive change, to then really re-establish who they are and what they want to do, is the first step, really. um
Yeah, absolutely. I think and some people sort of have this fear about starting their own business as if they need to be, I'm going to show my age now, but I was going to say ICI on day one, but I don't think ICI have existed for about 20 years. But they have this feeling that they need to be that having a business is something huge.
yeah.
So it probably be good to hear about your story. How did you start up? So your business is Westfield Coaching.
Yeah.
So how did you start up?
So mine was after a massive change as well. So I'll tell you the process that I went through, because that is literally the process that I go through with anybody I coach at those stages as well. So when we say setting up a business, it seems absolutely massive, but to set up a business is just getting on the internet, putting it in HMRC and giving yourself a name, and actually declaring that you are about to go self-employed. That is all that setting up a business involves. Okay, so if we're looking at it as a little, it is just a tiny thing, but it's the bit that's before that to think, do you know what do I want to do? So I left, I got made redundant from a job. I took this job for about 3 years because I was in poor mental health, so I needed to recover. And then I got made redundant, which gave me a lump sum of money. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was enough for me to make the decision of setting up by myself. Now, I say that I made that decision like that, but what I actually did was I wrote down what I do want and what I don't want from my next position. So whether that be a job or whether that be self-employment. So for me, I wrote down what I didn't want, and it was usually, or that at that time, it was based on my previous experiences, but also the current situation I was in with the job I was at. So I wrote the list of what I didn't want. I didn't want to work weekends. I work weekends. I didn't want to work evenings. I work evenings. And all these things, what I was not, um, what I didn't want to do. And quite often, for some people, especially if they've had a massive change, they don't feel good about themselves. So actually, the negative thoughts are easier to establish. So I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want this. Rather than what you do want. Sometimes when you feel as if you haven't got that lift to get to that point. So I wrote the list of what I didn't want, which obviously when I wrote that list, it gave me the list of what I did want then. So I wanted normal hours. I didn't want to work 5 days a week. This was just my story. I didn't want to work weekends. I certainly didn't want to do unsociable hours. I didn't want to work every weekend. And from that, I thought, do you know what? I'm going to look for some things that fit into this. Um, which was where it went to to go self-employed, because my stipulations of what um, I wanted really to be in control. So I was thinking about this the other day, actually, Tamsin. So I went and walked my dog locally, and I walked past this place that I went for an interview at before I left the last job and before I went self-employed. And I thought to myself, when I went in there, I walked around and I looked at the mess, the clutter, the disorganization, the lack of order, the lack of, um, how could I put it, the lack of customer service, and I went for my interview as normal, but I was still thinking, what could I do to change this? Now, the position I interviewed for was not a position where I could change anything, you know? So, but what that I recognized in myself was, I'm really strong, I'm really independent, I really like things a certain way, I'm really good, I've got so many fantastic skills that when I then wrote down all these things that I could bring to a role or to a job or to self-employment, it then became a viable solution to go self-employed. So with this money that I got from the job, it was a case of, okay, I knew I had to transition from teaching into coaching, and I wasn't egotistical enough to think it was a straight transition without any qualifications. So I started my studying before I got made redundant. So the biggest investment was that in the first year. And then it was a case of, okay, how am I going to do it? Who do I want to work with? So just by actually writing down what my skills were, it gave me an idea of what I could go into and what my business could be. So that's what I would encourage first of all is write down a list first of all of what you don't want to do, and then write a list of your strengths and your skills that you have. And sometimes again, when we think about that low period that people might be in, it might be that we ask our friends, we ask our, people close to us, because we haven't got that feeling of strength at that time sometimes. So if we ask other people, they will relay to us what our skills and strengths are.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it can be really difficult to even be able to write those down if you're in a place where you kind of feel that you're not worth anything.
Mm,
And
yeah,
it's not everybody who's going to feel like that at the end of divorce. Some
no.
people will be like, yes,
I can
I'm
take on the world.
happy. Here we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for those people, those lists are going to be absolutely brilliant, and they're going to be able to get on straight away with those. But for people who are finding, feeling a bit, still feeling emotionally raw,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's a fantastic idea. Another thing you said was that you got straight on with investing in yourself
yeah,
and putting yourself through a qualification. I know you're a massive advocate for self-development, and I know you kind of have that as an ongoing thing with yourself. Is there a particular route that you would suggest people went down to find somebody to help them to through this process to work with?
I think if you're, initially starting up, I think, asking people who have done it before you, what are the pitfalls? So, for example, I spoke to a lady the other day about setting up as a one-to-one diet consultant, and what we see quite often, it's the stuff that's behind that. So yes, we can all see it's shiny, it's fantastic, and it seems like people are making £10,000 a year or £10,000 a month or whatever. But actually getting to the facts of it, what does it take? What is it going to take? And quite often I say before you can make an informed decision, you need to have the information. Um, so speaking to others who've done it before you, but also there is so much now, like working with a coach, working with a mentor, where you can actually access this information. Where to think, well, where do I start? If you there are so many places that offer this now, where it is about asking for help. I think that's the main thing. Now, if you are that person who is like, yes, I'm free, and they've got all these ideas and they invest loads and loads of money, all I would say is invest it in the right things that are going to actually, springboard you into success. Now, success, as you know, when we've spoken, success can mean very different things to different people. So again, clarity about what you want and clarity about where you want to go is always part of the plan. Now, I think personally, which I would say is, for me, having a coach to talk through those processes and actually sound those ideas out have been the best investment I've made. As over the 4 years, I've always had a coach, I've always had a mentor, and it's almost like someone shining the light as to where I need to go next, and it's about tweaking things as you go along. Um, and although it's really exciting setting up a business, it's also knowing that, it is a financial investment, it's a massive time investment, and, we all want success. So where do we put that? Where do we put our time? Where do we put our energy that's going to give us the best return, not just financially, but emotionally and and for our well-being as well.
No, I think that's really good advice. It's interesting what you were saying about coaches and finding a coach or a mentor to work with, because there seem to be a gazillion coaches out there. Like everybody seems to be a coach at the minute.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know if you need a coach,
Mm.
and where on earth do you start finding the right coach for you in your situation?
Yeah. I think, when do you know that you need a coach is when you've exhausted talking to all your friends and family and not doing anything about it,
Good
Somebody who's
advice.
got an outsider's view who can say to you, right, this is a process, or this is what I've done before, this is what is successful. And also to find a coach, I think, yes, there are gazillions of us, but look for ones who are qualified. I've got a bee in my bonnet about that. But also, talk to them, find out, watch them, watch how they're, I've thought about this recently, because not everybody will want my lifestyle business, so they might want another coach who is earning a lot and lot of money. They might and that again goes back to the clarity of what they want. So if they want a huge amount of money in their self-employment, then they would go for a coach who is stating that they have made X amount of figures in their first month, etc., etc. It depends on what they want. But also, I think if you spoke to somebody and, on the phone, or just, just watching them on LinkedIn or watching their profiles and how they hold themselves, what it is that's important to them, then you can resonate with them or you don't, and you'll know that by scrolling past them. Um, but most coaches offer some form of conversation before you commit financially anyway. I mean, for me that's dead important as an ethical code anyway, is I will always put the person I speak to in front of the right person. I always say to people, even though we can coach everybody, it's not, sometimes we don't have to, and it's right to send them somewhere else as well. So if somebody was looking for a coach, like I say, it's if you've exhausted talking to everybody and trying to get the information you need, but never actually putting your first step forward. And it's just so you're not on your own, and you just go right. And then once you speak to a coach, like for me, I have a single session, a refocus session. And once you've done that refocus session, for me, they're away. It's almost like your hand, there you go, you've got it. They walk away with a white, a massive piece of paper under their arms, walking away for their steps and movement forward, and that's the exciting part, is when you know that you're ready to go, as in ready to take that next step, get a coach and let them walk with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when before I started working with you, it was about you kept coming into my vision, and while I was on social media, there was something about the words that you used and about their language that really resonated with me, that really spoke to me. I'm part of your group coaching, which are called warriors, and there was
Yeah.
something, a whole thing about being a warrior, and not that, and actually that's quite interesting, because I was brought up a pacifist. I'm quite a peaceful person, but there was something about conquering the world, about being a warrior, and about being part of this kind of supportive community, which really spoke to me. And that's not going to speak to everybody. There'll be
No.
different people that different types of language will speak to, but I do think there's something in reading through whether somebody's information speaks to you, whether you kind of are not sort of moved, but whether it kind of touches you in your heart, not just your brain, not just
Yeah.
reading kind of the words and going, oh, that makes sense. It needs
Yeah.
to be more than that. I think you need a bit of an emotional response to it as well.
Absolutely. And I think, for you as well, just to give you, I know you say you kind of, a quiet, passive, but what a fierce warrior you are in your business, and not only that, you are forming these wonderful communities as well, which, you know, I would say you are fierce, fierce in a really good way.
Not a face in a scary way.
No, in a lovely way. Just
All
the
the
fact that you lead by example. And I think, I know we've had this conversation before, but as you lead people through their processes, as a coach would anyway, and I think, we all need you. I need you.
oh, bless you. I think I mean we've just mentioned about, like, I like the group coaching style,
Yeah.
and other people I'm sure would prefer a kind of one-to-one style. What could somebody who was approaching a coach for the first time, what should they expect, and what should they be looking for?
Ooh, that's a good question. So with a coach, I think it depends on what you want, but for me it's about when you have that first conversation, does that coach listen to you and what you want? Because even though, coaching is never led by the coach, it's always led by the client. So, like with the group coaching, there's quite a lot of mentoring in there. So it's a case of, right, this is what we'll do. It's like a nice switch of what this is the subject we're going to investigate. Whereas with coaching, it's kind of like it has to be led by the client. So if you felt during a conversation with any coach, that you were being squished, I call it, squashed into a shape that isn't yours, then walk away. Because at the end of the day, I want to work with people who want their idea of success. And that sounds very wet, but what I mean by that is, if they're shaped like a square and I'm trying to fit them in a round hole, it's not going to work. And the greatest success stories for us as coaches is when somebody, flourishes in their business in whatever way that looks to them, but also feels able to do it on their own. And that to me is a success.
Hmm.
um, so yeah, look for somebody who listens to what you want and always gives you back responsibility as well. I'm a big one for saying, so what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, and what I do as a coach is just help you to get to where you want to get to, but it has to be led by you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what it's not is having somebody to give you all the answers.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not, you're not going, right, this is the problem, what do I do? It's about somebody helping you to find your own answers from kind of inside you, isn't it? Is that
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And also, what are you motivated by? I might be motivated by chocolate brownies and, spending time with my dogs, but
pretzels,
yeah,
twiglets?
twiglets. But you might be, somebody else might be motivated in a very different way. And for a coaching relationship to work, there needs to be that rapport and that understanding as to, my coaching to say I coached you, Tamsin, would be very different from me coaching somebody else, because your idea of success and what you want is different to another person's. Now, I always said this when I was teaching, it wasn't about the the kids or the young people adapting to me. It was about me adapting my skills to teach them. And it's the same with coaching. It's the same with coaching, um yeah, so I would say look for adaptability in your coach as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's good advice. So in terms of group coaching, one of the things that I love about our lovely warrior group is the is that you're benefiting from other people's experiences
Yeah,
and other people's views on the world as just your own, and we're all pretty supportive of one another, and
yeah,
we're all kind of trying to big each other up and so on. But yeah, some of the situations where we've been put into smaller groups and somebody's seen the world from a completely different perspective, to me have just made a massive difference to the way I've been able to view things. Are there any other benefits that you see of being in a group coaching situation as opposed to being one to one?
yeah. I think group coaching for me is that's how I started. So when I was in my worst position ever of leaving teaching and losing my identity, it was personal development and group coaching that got me through those first stages. So yes, you've got the element of having their ideas as well, but also um, it's about having that the cheerleaders, the people who look after you, who look out for you as well, because quite often I hear a lot of people say, it's quite lonely in business. Now I'm quite self-sufficient, so I quite like a bit of isolation, but a lot of people don't, they need those sounding boards, and quite often I might not have the answers for you, but somebody else in the group will, and I think that different perspective, different viewpoint is fantastic. I think the collaborative approach as well, to looking out for each other and kind of like going, well, have you thought of this? So your industry, Tamsin, is very different to somebody else's industry, and yet the practices in the financial industry could really benefit somebody, say for example copywriting industry, or graphic design industry. But the other thing is that I always say about the networking part of it is that, who do you know that I need to be introduced to? So it's almost like I always say that everyone's got like an address book. So it might not be working for you entirely, but actually I can put you onto somebody else. So for example, I've had one-to-one clients who I've sent to you because I've had that relationship with you and I know how good you are. So, and I think it just opens up those possibilities to collaborate as well, which is, quite often we feel in business that it's competitive, and it shouldn't be. If I say it shouldn't be, it feels that way sometimes, but having a collaborative approach will actually open more doors than you can imagine. So yeah, I mean the other obvious thing for group coaching is it is slightly cheaper than one-to-one coaching, and I think it's important for me anyway to offer a different price point to people, because um I want people to access coaching, and in order for them to access it, it needs to be affordable. And and I think the more people who get to know how effective coaching is, the better, the better my business is, but the better everybody else feels about themselves and about their business as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think one of the things about, particularly when you're starting out, one of the massive benefits of having a group coaching is that you are there all on social media, liking each other's posts, sharing each other's posts, like, and you've got those people in your head almost constantly. You know, if I see we've got a wonderful lady who specialises in PT for endometriosis. So as soon as I see that word anywhere on the internet, I'm like, you need to speak to this
Yeah.
lady. She's top of my, and it's the same with all the people in the group. As soon as I see somebody who needs somebody, who one of us that does that work, you're straight on it, and they're in the top of your mind all the time, because you see them regular, not in person, because we've unfortunately not been able to do that yet, but you see them all the time. You know, we have regular contact, and so they're at the forefront of your mind. And that's what networking is at the end of the day, isn't it? It's being at the forefront of somebody's mind, so that when they need what you do, you're the person they go to.
Exactly, and it's reciprocated as well. I think that's the lovely
Absolutely.
thing, and I think, as long as it's a genuine referral, and that's the great thing about Warriors, is that we get to know each other personally, but also professionally. We know people's ethics, we know the way they think, we know their intention behind the business. So when we refer or recommend somebody, it's a genuine recommendation, because we know exactly that whoever uses whatever services we're promoting, they're going to be in safe hands.
Yeah.
um so yeah, absolutely. And I think, um, we've been extremely lucky with the Warriors we've got at the moment. I think we've got some fabulous uh, businesses, and everyone's at different stages, which is lovely. People starting off, people needing that confidence, people just needing that support. But, it's been a fantastic year for so many, and their businesses have grown by the effort that they've put in,
Yeah.
which is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another thing that's worth mentioning, you know, if there's anybody watching this or listening to this that's not, that perhaps has a job and isn't ready to give it all up,
Yeah.
but wants to start doing something as this is like an overused word at the minute, but side hustle.
Yeah.
Seems to want to have a side hustle at the minute. But you know, if you want to generate some other income in a different way, we've got people who work in our group coaching who aren't, you know, they have a business, but it's not necessarily their full-time work. It's still worth being part of some coaching, isn't it? Because you can build that up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm going to mention the MLM words as well, the network marketing, because I just think people have a very different perspective on it. But I think it's such an amazing way to bring an income in while you're in a transition stage. So, for example, one-to-one diets, it might be Usborne Books, it might be Body Shop, all of those that actually do, sometimes it opens a door for people's confidence, so that they know that they can shut this door of employment to go and open a door of self-employment. And I think, quite often what people forget with network marketing is you do have a mentor built into the actual strategy of the business. You are supported throughout as well. But being part of a group coaching experience will just build that confidence until you get the confidence to go, right, okay, I'm going to close this door and open this next one. And it's having things in place. I always say it's like building that foundation before you actually start building the business later on.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's about taking the steps and knowing, okay, I'm not going to be in this scenario forever,
Yeah.
but this is the step, and this is what feels right for me and what I want to do with my life at the minute. And you know, I know network marketing can be fantastic, particularly for we know a lot of like parents who need to work around their children and can't necessarily commit to a office hours job or going to another place because they've got family commitments. And sometimes those network marketing jobs are are exactly what you need to be able to give you that flexibility, but without kind of jumping in with an idea of your own that's not ever been done before. It's like you say, they have got that backing of support, haven't they? I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, and I know there are some out there that haven't got a particularly good name, so you do need to do your research. But
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I also think as well, the recently I've spoken to a lady who is in employment, but wants to set up on her own. And quite often the only thing to consider there is the match in the wage. So the match in that wage, and it almost what we need is we need a guarantee that that wage is going to come from self-employment, and it's not going to come straight away, which is why if you build the business gradually before you leave the job, it's almost like that safety net. So
yeah,
especially if you've got family, especially if you've got commitments, then it's almost like you need to say, right, okay, I'm matching that income with this, and then it makes it easier to make that decision to switch.
sure. No, I think you're absolutely right. We've been talking for half an hour, Becky. Can
Wow.
you believe it? We're quite good at this, aren't we? Before we wrap up, have you got any tips? So for somebody who is thinking that they're going to make that leap and either start up a business as their full-time gig or as supplement to their full-time job, have you got any tips?
I just think what you've said, Tamsin, is do your research. Make sure it's what you want to do. Write a list of what you do want or what you don't want, whichever, and make sure that really what is important to you. So I talk about core values a lot, and sometimes to find out your core values is what really annoys you in the world. What does it trigger in you? And then, so it's kind of like, and then you will get your core values. So if you get irate at some injustice on the telly, for example, or in the news, then one of your main things is justice. So yeah, find out what's important to you, and find out, I would say, on a practical level, is how much do you need to bring in to cover all your bases, so that what you are intending to do will actually do that at some stage, and obviously my top tip would be to get a coach, um and one that you resonate with, and one that you feel you could work with.
Brilliant. That's fantastic, Becky. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's been really great to talk to you, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Tamsin. Look after yourself. See you soon.